Thank you everybody so much for joining us today. I'm gonna try and get out of your hair as soon as possible because nobody came here to see me. But first, I just wanted to, one, thanks again everybody for showing up here and sort of set the tone for what we are doing here. So I'm super excited to be joined by so many great legislative champions and elected officials for this event. And working with so many organizations who are committed to making our democracy work for Oregonians. My name is Gregory McKelvey, and I am with Portland Forward today. And we are just, again, I'm going to try and get out of your hair pretty soon here so we can hear from all of my role models that are on the call right now. But again, we want to set the stage a little bit. I'm supposed to be nice and upbeat, but we do have a problem here in Oregon because Oregon has for so long been the Wild West of campaign finance. We are one of the only 5 states in this union without limits on campaign contributions, and the legislative and champions and elected officials we have here today are some of the people working hard to change that. This makes Oregon races some of the most expensive races in the country. We often are either first or second in the most expensive races in the country. And as somebody who has ran campaigns before, it's not necessarily something where we are saying that this is about corruption or quid pro quos or anything like that, but it's just trying to remove money from our political system. Right now, it's a system in which money often dominates. And again, as someone who has run campaigns, it often can influence who candidates and elected officials have to talk to. So if you are able to talk to people who feel as though their $5, their $10, their $50 really matters in participating in your election, that can be way different conversations than somebody who can write a $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 check. And it can influence what your priorities are as an elected official, as well as you hear from those voices. So what is the solution? Again, this is not what you need to hear from me, but it's today is a fantastic opportunity to fulfill voters' overwhelming demand for democracy that works for the people. We have seen mandates in our state across jurisdictions and at the state level for campaign finance reform and to get big money out of politics. But we need you to help us and the people you're hearing from today make that case to their colleagues that we need reform right now. And that now is a critical moment on this issue. So we're gonna get started with one of my biggest role models, Commissioner JoAnn Hardesty. And I didn't write these bios, so if I mess anybody up, you guys can all text James Offsink about it later. Commissioner JoAnn Hardesty is the first Black woman elected to Portland City Council in our city's 176-year history. She is the commissioner overseeing Portland Fire and Rescue, Portland Bureau of Transportation, and the Office of Community and Civic Life. Longtime advocate for democracy reform, including her work at the NAACP Portland branch and numerous other organizations. And with that, I will give it to my friend, JoAnn Hardesty.
Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you, Common Cause, for inviting me to be part of this very esteemed panel. Let me just take a second and look at this panel. A couple of short years ago, this would not have been what this panel would have looked like. So I just want to take a moment and just honor how far we've come in a very short period of time. I am a huge champion of campaign finance reform that removes big money out of politics. And my service on Portland City Council is a perfect example as to why. Prior to my election, the expectation of Portland City Council members was that they be white, that they be male, that they be rich, and they be connected to downtown money influence. And then I did something crazy like running a grassroots campaign, going door to door, hosting 150 house parties, and limiting my campaign contributions, not because there was a law, but because I wanted regular people to be able to support me in my campaign for city council. Um, I was outraised, I was outspent, but I can tell you nobody worked harder than my campaign. And now, when I joined the city council for the first time in its history, the majority of the city council were women. 2 years later, the City Council of Portland is majority people of color. We have the first Latinx woman, we have the third African American male, and I'm still there. They haven't gotten rid of me yet. In addition, we have a gay white male who is the second outwardly gay white male. The only traditional person currently serving on Portland City Council is the mayor. Um, that didn't happen by accident. And these fabulous new people who joined me at City Council we have something in common. We're all deeply embedded in community, and we talk about people and not things. And what you will see, because these individuals had the ability to have public dollars, is that they are beholden to the people of Portland and not to the special interests who believe it's their job to decide who leads the city. Um, our conversations are different. Our budget priorities will be different. And it would not have happened without good people having the ability to have public match, 6-to-1 match, up to $50 contribution. If that had not happened, there is no way the Portland City Council would have changed so rapidly in 2 years, not with a 176-year history of electing rich white men. This is critical, and it is my hope that this is something that will spread all over the country, because once we fix the state of Oregon, we got to fix Congress. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. And next we have Representative Andrea Valderrama. That sounds great to say. Representative Valderrama is the newest member of the Oregon legislature and represents District 47 in East Portland. She's also chair of the David Douglas School Board and has a long history of fighting for a more just future with the ACLU, Coalition of Communities of Color, and the City of Portland. She is also a former Common Cause board member. And with that, Representative.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for the opportunity to join you all this evening. My name is Andrea Valderrama, she, her, ella, proudly representing House District 47 in Outer East Portland. For me, I just want to say that I truly believe that it is a hard-earned right to engage civically and to engage in our campaigns. Our ancestors were denied this right. BIPOC communities have been denied this right time and time again. And even in this year, in this moment, we're continuing to see steps to prevent voting and prevent engaging in our democracy in Florida and Texas and around the country. And so it's radical to believe in the type of democracy that we believe in right now. And it's radical to envision this democracy that is racially and ethnically diverse, as the commissioner mentioned, right, to be led by progressive, Black, Indigenous people of color that divests from institutionalized white supremacy and actually invests those dollars into BIPOC communities and BIPOC-led organizations doing the civic engagement work that we know is so essential to grassroots organizing and grassroots campaigns. And that we know that it's incredibly important to envision and continue envisioning a democracy that invests in our workers and leads with our racial and economic justice values. I think as Greg mentioned, I actually started my own journey here to this role in advocacy, actually as a student organizer, because I envisioned a community in which my family or my friends didn't have to be scared to drop me off at school because of their documentation status. And as a result, we passed tuition equity and sanctuary laws. And then I couldn't stop there, right? I knew people power was the right power. And so continued my advocacy as a resident of Outer East Portland, because I envisioned a community there in which tenants weren't wrongfully displaced, in which elections were accessible to people who looked and talked like me. And then we passed mandatory relocation assistance and public campaign financing in the city of Portland. And I just want to lift up that I'm a strong supporter of publicly financed campaigns. I believe that the legislature should move in this direction as well. But as a Portlander, I've seen the impact of our open and accountable elections program. But in the meantime, I do think that a campaign finance reform at the legislature is a must. And some of the things that I'm looking for in the legislature right now are maintaining the ability for 501c4s to in-kind support staff or otherwise, worker justice. I absolutely believe in employees deserving a living wage in any setting. I think campaign staff are certainly no exception. And I do think that it's really important to have match programs, right? And make sure that we're lifting up as many people as possible. I think that we absolutely do need to get big money out of politics, that we need to keep fighting for a vision of this democracy that was well earned and well fought for. And that means that we have elections that are electing people like we did last night, right? Of and by the communities who we are serving. And I'll just close with just sharing that I think a couple of weeks ago, actually Representative Sam and I were at a IRCO legislative day of action, and one of the incredible organizers there said, "You are us." And it was such a strong moment for me because a few years ago that would not have been said, right? In these legislative advocacy days of immigrant and refugee communities, to know that you are us and we are truly representative of BIPOC communities, of progressive values. I'm just so proud and honored to be part of a legislature that's majority women, to be the first proven American in this role, but also to have one of the strongest BIPOC caucuses that we have ever had. And I think that it's possible now to have campaign finance in this way. And so I'm just deeply honored to be here and to just lift up all of these good things that are happening. And thank you all so much for joining us this evening and for your time. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Representative. And next we have another one that is very fun for me to be able to say. My friend, Senator Casey Jama. Senator Jama represents Oregon's 24th Senate District, serving large parts of East Portland. Jama is the first refugee and first Muslim to serve in the Oregon Senate. He is the founder of Unite Oregon, a statewide nonprofit organization led by people of color, immigrants and refugees, rural communities, and people experiencing poverty, working across Oregon to build a unified intercultural movement for justice. He's been a longtime advocate for expanding democracy and limiting the outsized role of big money. Senator?
Thank you, Greg, and good to see you all. I really appreciate the two leaders who went before me, Commissioner Harasty and Representative Valderrama. It's hard to follow, but they said everything that needs to be said. So I will just add to it. I've been in this state for 22 years, and as the first refugee, first immigrant, first Muslim senator serving Oregon Senate, it's really a different world out there. We are the only office in the Senate side of it, only being both staffed and led by POC, BIPOC immigrant refugee community. And that tells a lot about this state. I know there's also Senator Frederick and Senator Manning, who are both of them also doing amazing work in the Senate side of it, but we need to elect more people. And the only way to expand the election, electing more POC on the Senate side and also overall statewide, is actually making sure that there is an equal level playing field. That is, that their people are able to run, finance their campaign, and get the support that they need from their communities. And the only way to do that is really making sure that the corporations have and they're not able to influence our elections and community get participated. Let me give you an example. The 22 years I spent, Joanna and I know that we almost fought every single fight in public finance campaign, from the first time when the city of Portland established the first publicly funded campaign finance to the recent one that they created, to all the way to now what's happening on the state level. All of that fights really led by people who are making sure that our democracy works for everybody. And with that said, I don't come from someone who's wealth background. I came to this country as a refugee. I had a book and a small backpack when I came to this state of Oregon. That's all I had. And I know there's a lot of people who are struggling in my district who are amazing leaders, who are incredible, powerful leaders, who, if they get the opportunity to serve and being financed, are able to really create a policies that really impacts in our community far beyond what is already happening in the state level and the city level. So we need to make sure that people who look like us, talk like us, speak like us, can have the opportunity to serve. And last night was actually a great example of that. But we need to do more. We need to make sure that people are give the opportunity. And the only way to give that opportunity is to ensure that we have campaign contribution limits, but also we have campaign public finance campaign. There's a difference between the two. One is limiting how many money people can contribute or corporations can contribute. The other one that we spend public dollars to invest our election system, our democracy. I cannot emphasize enough. Investing our democracy is the best money that we can invest in our system. Europe does that. Other countries does that. They invest. If you go into Europe system, they elected and invest their candidates to ensure they get the best candidates out of all. That's how the other civilized and what other people are doing. And we can do this. We can be a beacon in the state of Oregon, ensuring that public finance campaign works, but also campaign contribution limits works as well. So I am really, really proud to be part of the movement that is working so hard to ensure that we have this system overturned. That is really what we need to do. And good example is that in New York, well back when they established their first campaign contribution, public finance and campaign contribution limits, they were able to see literally in map areas that where people of color are living prior to their policy, how the policy that changed, able to see that the color is increased for participation. It's proven system. If you invest, if you put money on public finance campaign, if you put campaign contribution limits, you will have a better leaders, you will have better results, and you have a better democracy that works for all people. With that said, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm happy to be part of this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Next up, we have Representative Con Pham. Representative Pham is the representative for Oregon District 46, representing the Jade District in parts of Northeast and Southeast Portland. She's the first Vietnamese American legislator in the Oregon legislature, and currently the only elected Asian Pacific Islander in Oregon state government. Prior to the legislature, Rep. Pham was a founding leader of and spokesperson for the groundbreaking Portland Clean Energy Fund initiative, and has been a vigilant advocate for environmental justice at Oregon Just Transition Alliance and the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon. Representative.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and I won't repeat all the great points that my colleagues have already made about how our current system clearly just leaves out and prevents ordinary people, working class people, BIPOC communities, immigrant communities from being able to run, because it just is so expensive, and we don't have the networks, we don't have the access to wealthy donors, and it really prevents good governance. It prevents us from really coming up with the best policies, because we need the people who are the most directly impacted coming up with the policies, because they know what it's like to actually have to cobble together and work two jobs to make ends meet. And they know what it's like to have no childcare infrastructure and trying to raise a family. And they know what it's like to face discrimination and hate, and why we need strong policies to fight against bias and discrimination. So I am just really excited to really put forth the need for true campaign finance reform. And I wanted to share just one way how I see it. I mean, I see it show up in every single issue I care about, every single issue that my constituents care about, whether they talk to me about healthcare or education or about climate change. It all either comes down to corporations or wealthy individuals not wanting to pay their fair share and influencing policies that way, in terms of, you know, skirting taxation so that we underfund schools, or we don't have enough a healthcare system that really covers everybody. Or it's actually in policies. And we see so much in the legislature still, how in our timber system and other natural resource extraction, businesses have just been able to dominate the legislature because they can just spend, and that's not the way our democracy is supposed to work. And I saw it also in fighting for the Portland Clean Energy Fund. We fought so hard to build this powerful grassroots coalition in Portland that passed this most progressive policy led by communities of color and really centering racial justice as part of climate justice. And then we saw big business just go around us and go to the state level and try to preempt us at the state level. So I feel really strongly that that campaign finance reform is a climate justice issue, and we need to. And it's an educational justice issue. It's a racial justice issue. It's a transportation justice issue. It's an education issue. So I am really committed to doing everything I can to fight for really meaningful campaign finance reform. And I want to make sure I do everything I can to make sure the legislature passes really meaningful action this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Representative. So now we're gonna move, you've heard a lot of the issues and why we should care about this. Now we're going to talk about the path forward and what we can do. And we're going to start that off with Senator Jeff Golden. Senator Golden represents Oregon Senate District 3 in Southern Oregon, which includes Ashland and most of Medford and many of the surrounding communities. Campaign finance reform and enhancing Oregon's civic infrastructure have been longtime areas of focus for the senator. And in the 2019 legislative session, he was the chair of the Senate Committee on Campaign Finance. He's an accomplished author, journalist, and radio host. And with that, Senator.
I just want to talk about who's on the screen for a few minutes. This is thrilling. Hi, Commissioner Hardesty. And I've got really some of my very favorite colleagues on the screen. Rep Valderrama, I haven't met you yet, and that's high on my list. I really would like a little time to talk and get to know you some. And Kate, you have been just a spark plug for this, so focused my whole time in the legislature and longer. I just really thank you for that. So a couple things. I clearly don't have to talk about how important campaign finance reform is. I love the way Rep Pham put it. It's there. Money, the corruption, the distortion of money is there in every issue we really care about. And it's the reason we are not making progress when a majority of people of all colors want progress. You look at the polling and most people want what the people on this call want, and it's not happening. And the reason is money in politics. So that's almost self-evidently important. But I actually think what's happening right now in our opportunity is even bigger than that, because here we are in the wake of this enormous mandate last November for campaign finance reform, 4-1. There's almost no measure that's ever gotten that kind of support. And I believe we're in a bit under the microscope. I think Oregonians are watching to see what we do with this mandate. And I'm a little anxious that we won't rise to the moment, because I think, many people tuned into politics are wondering, are we going to design a system? We're trying to come up with a bill right now that mostly accommodates the insiders, people who run for office, the caucuses, people who professionally raise money, or is it going to be in the interest of all Oregonians? And, and the reason the stakes are even higher than money in politics is because this is the lead issue, in my view, surrounding people's mistrust of politics and people's cynicism about politics. And anybody who's in the system, in politics, in office, knows how brutally hard it is to make progress and to counter the cynical messaging when people don't trust the system. I think a lot of Trumpism, a lot of the success of the right comes directly out of the cynicism that jaded people feel about the system. They are really prey to the right-wing messaging about how we're all crooks and lining our own pockets, and that they shouldn't pay any attention to us. And everything we're trying to do is just a trick. So this is our opportunity to address that, a rare opportunity. I don't know that I'll call it once in a lifetime, but maybe once in a decade. So with that, my focus is I have a bill, Senate Bill 336, that is very much like Representative Salinas's bill, which I think is well crafted. I think it's well crafted because it's a lot like my bill, and I've signed on to her bill as well. And what the difference between that and the bill that's getting the most discussion in the legislature right now, well, there are quite a few, but I'll boil it down to one thing. I think it's essential, along with structuring a system where all Oregonians have access, where all are empowered to work for candidates, to run for office, to serve in office. You know, my sort of touchstone in this is that our system cannot allow huge contributions to candidates from any entity. And I don't know exactly what huge means, but when you get into six figures, you're getting there. From any entity that has an identifiable interest in the way legislation comes out. And if we don't follow that principle, I don't see how we look Oregonians in the eye and with a straight face and say, we really reform this system. So I have deep concerns about, a bill that was heard last session coming out of the House on that score. I understand this is not a simple conversation. The objective of having C4s and the BIPOC community really players in elections in a way they haven't been before makes this a more complicated issue than it would be otherwise. But my focus is finding legislation and fine-tuning legislation that really is inclusive in a way that we haven't been before and follows that principle. No huge checks from any entity with an axe to grind in the legislature. And we're going to fail our test right now and lose our potential for gaining public support if we don't do that. And my belief longer term is that the tide can really swing towards progressivism if, the millions of Americans, many Oregonians who are not especially partisan, but are just sick of the nonsense and sick of the corruption, see, a portion of the electorate and of public officials who are really committed to representative government. I think they start closing down to the right-wing scream machine. They get less cynical, they get more engaged, and we can move in the direction we want to on so many issues. Lastly, I'll say, please sign me up for the Public Matching Funds campaign. That's essential. We got to get there. And thanks.
Thank you so much, Senator. Because this is the last sort of transition time introduction I have, I wanted to just thank the people that invited me to moderate this a bit, and also some of the groups off the top of my head that are working hard on this issue: Common Cause, Augsburg, Portland Forward, Our Revolution, Honest Elections, and I'm sure more that I'm unable to think of right now. But with that, I'm going to introduce Representative Salinas. Representative Andrea Salinas, actually my representative here in Mountain Park, represents Oregon House District 38, which includes most of Lake Oswego and parts of Southwest Portland. In the legislature, she serves as chair of the House Special Committee on Redistricting, vice chair of the House Committee on Healthcare, and House Majority Whip. Even before her time as a representative, Representative Salinas has been a longtime advocate for Oregon families working to increase the minimum wage, fighting climate change, and providing comprehensive reproductive health care coverage to all Oregon women. She is the sponsor of this year's HB 3343, which again would bring real campaign finance reform to Oregon. And with that, Representative.
Thank you so much. And Greg, I didn't realize we were neighbors. I too am in Mountain Park. So thank you.
That's amazing.
I am so honored to be here with this distinguished panel. And I am not joking, like I am truly honored. I love seeing all these faces, these diverse faces. And thank you for everyone who showed up tonight. For those who don't know me, I'm Andrea Salinas, state representative from House District 38. I grew up in California and worked as an intern my last year of college for Senator Dianne Feinstein in her San Francisco district office. It was the year that she ran against Michael Huffington. Combined, the campaign spent upwards of $44 million for a statewide Senate race. Yeah, at the time, it was the most expensive race in the nation outside of a presidential race. That race made me question my ability to ever really help influence the policies in my state, much less our nation. I didn't have that kind of money that was pouring into those races. I could barely afford to pay for the parking in downtown San Francisco for the 6 hours I interned in her office each week. Fast forward 26 years and one state north, and I'm now serving in Oregon's legislature, thinking the same thing I thought in 1994. How can anyone who can barely pay for their college tuition expect to participate in elections in a meaningful way? How do they know their voices will be heard and not drowned out by big money in politics? And how can I, right now with a clean conscience, continue to contribute to this dysfunction when it doesn't honestly or fairly serve our democracy and the people of Oregon? Oregon's one of a handful of states, as we've heard tonight, that doesn't have campaign contribution limits. And this is a gatekeeper to a full functioning participatory democracy. My dad came to the US from Mexico when he was 5, and I come from a long line of migrant farm workers. I was the first of the Salinas or the Cordovas to go to college. I didn't grow up wealthy, and I don't have generational wealth, but I have a number of potential opponents in my upper middle class income district who could self-fund $1 million opposition campaign to my race at a moment's notice. So it's a privilege to even be able to run for office. And that privilege is a gatekeeper to a diverse legislature. But we have the opportunity to shift that privilege and make accessing our political system a little bit fairer. Right now, we have some of the youngest and my most diverse group of freshmen, 3 of whom are with us tonight. I am so excited to welcome these new fresh faces like Winsfeld Campos, Con Pham, Ricky Ruiz, Casey Jama to our legislature. But I want other young candidates to believe that they too can mount a credible campaign and still hold down a job and maybe care for their families. This session, I've been working hard to bring real campaign finance reform to the state of Oregon, because frankly, Oregonians are sick of big money in politics. Over 20 years since the Oregon Supreme Court ruled that campaign contribution limits violated the state constitution, Oregon has become a leader, but in all the wrong ways. We're one of only 5 states with no limits on cash contributions for individuals and corporations. We rank #1 in per capita corporate giving, and our elections are often the most expensive in the nation. You can see why Oregonians want system change. They want their voices to be heard. They want to feel like their vote counts in an election. But when someone like Phil Knight can contribute $3.5 million to influence the results of an election, it's easy to understand, as Senator Golden just said, why they feel disengaged and discouraged. But this session, we have a unique opportunity to take real and meaningful action on campaign finance reform. As the chief sponsor of House Bill 3343, it's what I've been working on all session. And I believe that components of my bill and Senator Golden's bill, SB 336, are crucial to getting us to that real reform that Oregonians want. It's absent of the big loopholes that allow the big contributions to seep in, and it has low limits that Oregonians can relate to, and it has the enforcement structures that will provide real accountability. And I believe that momentum is there to pass a strong bill with these provisions, but time is running out. The legislative session is set to end on June 27th, and as things stand, all campaign finance reform bills still need to make it out of committee and through both chambers. I know that seems like a daunting task in the slow-moving world of politics, but it is possible. But it's going to take the voices of Oregonians, like everybody on this call tonight, telling legislative leadership that we need real campaign finance reform. It's what we voted on in the fall. I understand what you're probably thinking. Contact your legislator. That's what I'm always asked to do. It's the oldest cliche in the book. But I only say it because it actually works. Before I vote, and I'm sure the legislators on this call can tell you the same thing, I ask my staff, what are constituents saying about this bill? How many voicemails have I gotten? How many letters in support? How many letters against? Because they matter. And I know leadership asks the same thing. So I need you to contact legislative leadership and your legislator and tell them that we need to move forward on campaign finance reform this session that's free of loopholes, that allow big contributions. We need to get rid of that keeps limits low and that broadens power to everyday Oregonians. We don't know if this moment will come again. And with such limited time left in session, it's important that we make this count and use the opportunity we have now to pass real and meaningful campaign finance reform that brings the massive structural change to our elections. Right now is the time, and right now we all need you. So thank you, thank you, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. Thank you so much for your help. Thank you for being in this with us. And I know we can get this done. So thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Salinas, and thank you all for presenting. Before we close, let me just step in here. I'm Kate Titus. I'm the director of the Oregon chapter of Common Cause. And now before we close, there's one more piece, and this is really the most important thing. It's not a given that we're going to pass campaign finance reform. We have an opportunity right now. We are so close. We have done a lot of work. We passed a ballot measure last fall that opened up the constitutional space for this. We've been working on this for years, and the legislature is seriously debating it, really probably seriously for the first time in decades. We have a chance, but it's not a given that it's going to happen. It really comes back to us and what we're going to do. The leaders that you've heard from tonight, they are championing this reform on the inside. They've championed it on the outside too, but they are us, and they are our inside champions working for this. But we have to champion it just as hard on the outside. And if we don't, we will not get there. So we've got over 100 people on this call right now. Together, we actually have collective power. I'd like us all to take one action now while we're here together that will really make a difference. We know that every legislator is really important in this debate, but we also know that the legislative leadership, the president of the Senate, the Speaker of the House, and the majority leader in both chambers have a lot of power in deciding what moves forward and what doesn't, whether it moves forward. So we're going to put a link into the chat right now. And what we'd like everyone, each one of us, to all do is click on that link and use this tool to send an email off to those 4 legislative leaders, asking them to move these bills forward, to move real campaign finance reform forward. Senator Golden has offered us a great bill on the Senate side. Representative Salinas has offered us a great bill on the House side. We need to ask legislative leadership to move this forward. If you click on the link that's going into the chat, it'll give you a tool. You need to put in your name and address so that the letter will come from you. And there's a template in there. You can just hit submit if you want. That's the easiest way. Or if you want it to be more powerful, spend a couple minutes right now, look at it and make it your own letter. You can delete everything that's in there and make it your own letter, or you can just tweak it to something, add something personal about yourself, where you're from, why this matters to you. So I'd like everybody to take a few minutes. If we do this right now, we can send 100 letters into legislative leadership tonight, and tomorrow we can send this out to some of our friends and add more. That will influence this debate. That will make a big difference. So please do that. And then once you have submitted it, put in the chat that you've submitted it. We want to see how many. We want to make sure that we're getting the collective power that we can have. When 1 or 2 of us does something, it helps. But when we do it in numbers, we really start to have power. So send in your letter and then put in the chat that you've submitted your letter. I'm going to do this right now because I just actually hit submit. And I see several people have already done this. Doug, thank you so much. Joan Horton, thank you. James, you're awesome. You were the first, actually. I see 1, 2. Yes, the bill numbers, if you go into the tool, you'll see the bill numbers, but they're Senate Bill 336 and House Bill 3343.
We actually have 22 signed up so far that have taken action.
If everyone left on the call can do this, we can get it to 100. It'll make a huge difference.
If I can, Kate, I just want to
No less
repeat.
will do, right? 100% participation is what we're looking for, right?
Yep.
I'm sorry, Senator, you were about to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to repeat how critical I think Common Cause has been to keeping this moving forward. The credibility, there aren't many groups active in the Capitol who are credibly seen as nonpartisan and devoted to the best possible government. And Common Cause is close to the top of the list. And Kate is just fierce for a better Oregon. And I'm really grateful for it.
Thank you, Senator. How many do we have now, Christina?
I'm on mute. We got 27.
Awesome. As people continue, please focus on this. It will make a difference if we do this in unison. As the numbers are going up, I want to move us toward closing up this evening. So just a few things to say in closing. First, thank you to all of our presenters. Thank you both for being here tonight, but also thank you for your leadership on this. It's really thanks to you that this can get done, that this is even a possibility. And thank you to all of you who are attending tonight. It's going to be thanks to us on the outside if we can get this done as well. When we lean in, we make a difference. We know this. You've just made a difference. You're making a difference right now. Legislative leadership is going to hear from, at least last count, 27 of us.
53 letters sent. Yep.
53 of us.
Yep.
Legislative leadership has already just heard from, they've got emails from over 50 of us in their inboxes right now. And before we get off this call, hopefully from 100. So here's what we can do next. Two things, okay? First, after this call, help spread the word. We'll follow up with video clips from this event, with social media, email updates. Please share this information with your networks. Ask your friends to join you in taking action. Two, ask to meet with your own legislator. Tonight, we reached out to legislative leadership. They have a key role, but we need every legislator to hear from their constituents. They all influence each other. Legislative leadership isn't going to move this unless a majority of their colleagues are on board. So all of the legislators matter. Now, if you haven't ever met with your legislator, it's probably easier than you might think it is. You can just email their office and ask for a meeting. Nowadays, they'll do it remotely online. You don't have to drive to Salem. It'll only last 15 minutes. It's enough time to introduce yourself and to briefly discuss the issue. You don't need to be an expert on campaign finance reform to meet with your legislator. You only need to be an expert on you. Let them know why this matters to you, why you think it would matter to all of us, that you hope they'll act on this, that you hope they'll work for good reform, not a sham.
That's right. 70 letters sent, by the way.
Ooh, 70. We're getting there. You're so good. Scheduling a meeting with your own legislators takes a little more personal courage and commitment than an email. But in the end, I think you'll find it's still easier than you thought, and it's more meaningful. It will have a very powerful impact on your legislator if you can take this action. So I want to encourage folks to, in follow-up, to also reach out to your own legislator and schedule a meeting. And I'm going to put a link in the chat for any of you who think you might be able to do that. This is a link to a report back form that you can use to report back on your meeting to the legislature. I encourage you to do that because the information we get back really helps us to make a difference. So where are we now, Christina, in terms of how many have we got so far?
We have 80 letters sent.
80 letters, we're getting there.
Almost there.
Just put the link for the report back if you meet with your legislators. You can, as we sign off on this event, just make sure you hit submit. It will make the difference. So that's it for tonight, folks. I want to thank you all again for participating. And remember, when we lean in, we make a difference. Thank you.